Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this webinar, which marks the release by the Australian Workforce and Productivity Agency of its study on the ICT workforce. I'm Robin Shreeve, and I will be joined at this webinar by the Chair of AWPA, Bullock. Philip's got a great interest in ICT because in a previous role, he was CEO of IBM in Australia and Asia. And we have another board member with us here today, Persson, who chaired the group that oversaw this study. Today we will provide some background on the work of the agency, outline the strategies featured in our ICT workforce study, and invite questions on the report and its recommendations. You will have the opportunity to ask questions throughout this presentation by typing in the chat box, or you can wait until the end and ask questions at that time. We will read out questions and answer as many questions as possible during this period, but those we cannot answer, we will email a reply and also put some information on our website. Philip.
Thank you, Robin. Look, the board first met in May 2008. At that time, it was called Skills Australia, and our focus was primarily around policy advice, particularly with regard to the current, future and emerging skills needs for Australia and how best to prepare for the future. And then over 12 months ago, the government expanded our role to include research, particularly around productivity in the workplace, also to maintain oversight of the $600 million plus National Workforce Development Fund, and to produce sectoral reports. In addition, we continue to provide advice to the Department of Immigration regarding skill occupations. Now, this ICT workforce study is one of these sectoral reports, and we're pleased to be able to share it with you today.
Thank you. Before we look at the ICT study, I'd like to provide some background from Future Focus, which is the recently released 2013 National Workforce Development Strategy. The strategy identifies technology and ICT as a key driver of change. Technology is changing the way we work, live and play. Across the world, internet usage grew by 566% between 2000 and 2012, and there will be 10 billion network devices in 2016, according to Cisco. Cloud computing is becoming ubiquitous as an office tool. New technologies such as automated devices, 3D printing, remote sensing and robotics are having a substantial impact on our society. Asian economies are key emerging markets in relation to both the production and consumption of ICT. More companies are outsourcing ICT services to Asia, but there is considerable potential for insourcing. Australian companies delivering niche ICT services to Asian markets. And the ICT workforce is at the forefront of changing patterns of work. This slide, which gives you an indication of how work is being sourced and resourced from different parts of the world. It's from the freelancer.com, which is really a giant eBay system where people bid for and supply work. It shows where work is being sourced, the countries in red, and where it's being supplied from, the countries in green. It's a really global market that we now operate in. If we go to our strategy, because we were concerned about linear forecasts, we developed 4 scenarios so we could stress test our policy recommendations against a variety of future options. It also enabled us to identify the commonalities across those different scenarios. And some of the commonalities, for example, are an aging population, the importance of Asia, and the sustainability challenge that we all face. But one of the commonalities across all scenarios was the rise and impact of technology. If you're interested, you can get more information about our scenarios on the AWPA website. But those scenarios and the strategy identified a number of headlines. They identified, for example, that there'll be 3.5 million more people in the workforce in 2025. People will have higher levels of qualifications. The number of professionals will actually increase, and that includes ICT professionals, and service industries will experience the largest increase. And the service industries include professional, scientific and technical services, which covers the majority of ICT workers. I'll now go over to Mari for the ICT workforce study.
Thanks, Robin, and good morning, everyone. Well, we're delighted to be releasing this report today. It's the culmination of 10 months of work by the AWPA team in collaboration and partnership with a whole range of stakeholders. And I'd like to take the opportunity today to express my gratitude for the advice and support provided by all the stakeholders throughout this process. In a nutshell, we found that even though there is predicted employment growth in the ICT industry, the reality is that the domestic supply of ICT skills is not keeping pace with demand. Most parties agree on the reasons for the poor supply of domestic ICT skills, but most of our focus has been on developing potential solutions. Accordingly, the report features a set of workforce development strategies for the industry, the tertiary education sector and government to boost the supply of specialist ICT skills, improve ongoing skills development for the ICT workforce, and promote the effective utilisation of ICT skills. And we'll be getting to that a bit later. But I'm going to hand back to Robin now, who will take you through some of the key data points that we found during the study.
Our report provides a comprehensive overview of ICT skills demand and supply. This slide demonstrates that employment is expected to grow across the ICT workforce over the next 5 years. A total of 460,000 workers were employed in the 18 primary ICT occupations in August 2012. Projections developed by the Department of Education, Employment and Workplace Relations predict this workforce to increase by over 33,000 workers, or 7.1% by 2017. This would bring the total ICT employment up to nearly 500,000 by 2017. This slide represents employment levels for the 6 highest employing ICT occupations. The 2012 employment is indicated dark blue, and projections for 2017 are in tan. Each occupation is expected to grow considerably by 2017. The next slide profiles commencements and completions in ICT higher education courses. The engagement of overseas students in Australian ICT degrees continues to be strong, but I'd like to focus on the domestic trends, which are the dark blue lines. Commencements and completions in ICT higher education courses are recovering after a decade-long decline. Domestic commencements increased by 11% between 2009 and 2011. Domestic completions grew by 4% between 2009 and 2011. Hopefully, the increase in commencements will flow through to completions in coming years. Despite these recent improvements, the domestic supply of ITC skills is not keeping pace with demand for these skills. In the next slide, we see the picture for the vet sector, which also plays a critical role in the supply of ICT-related skills by supporting qualifications for entry-level positions, such as ICT support technicians, and telecommunications roles central to the rollout of the NBN, and the upskilling for those already in work. The figure in this slide demonstrates the recent decline in participation in vet ICT courses. Commencements declined by 40% from 2008 to 2011, and completions also declined by 19% during this period, though the decline was the most acute for lower-level programs. However, the figures are positive for the small number of apprentices and trainees enrolled in ICT-related qualifications. Our agency supports the consideration of ICT apprenticeship pathways to help expand these advantages to more students. If we have a look at the picture for temporary migration, you can see that the contribution of temporary migrants to meeting demand for ICT professionals has increased significantly in recent years. The number of 457 visas granted for ICT professionals increased by 74% from 2009-2010 to 2011 and 2012. ICT professionals was the largest occupational group for skilled migration in 2011-2012. ICT professionals represented 13.5% of total primary subclass 457 visas granted during that period. Some employers report that temporary skilled migration enables access to specialised ITC skill sets that are not available in the Australian marketplace. However, it's really important that we should note that migrants comprise a small proportion of the total ICT workforce. Skilled, that's both permanent and temporary migration, accounts for less than 10% of ICT professionals and less than 5% of ICT managers employed in Australia. Nonetheless, it seems likely that skilled migration will continue to play a significant role in meeting demand for ICT workers in Australia. But the primary focus of the AWPA study then is to improve the engagement of the existing and emerging domestic workforce in ICT education. I'd like to hand back to Philip now.
Thank you, Robin. I must admit, when I saw these challenges, I was a little bit, in some ways, it was like deja vu, because these challenges are not new, and it's a bit disappointing because if I reflect back on, I started my career as a maths teacher in the country of New South Wales, and then I was seduced by a fledgling and exciting industry which really has continued to grow and evolve and in many ways changed the world in remarkable ways. I think we all recognise that ICT touches almost everything from saving people's lives to enabling new business models. And hence I personally feel that in some ways we failed to get the message out. And these challenges do tend to reflect, despite some very good and isolated programs. The feedback is clear. You know, the ICT industry does carry a legacy of negative perceptions of repetitive, isolating jobs and often potentially outsourced jobs. And the feedback regarding ICT education in schools seems to reinforce these views. Now, secondly, of course, many students who pursue an ICT education do experience difficulty in finding employment in the sector upon graduation, with only about 30 to 40% of graduates finding work in the industry. Employers often feel that students do not always possess the desired combination of technical and complementary business and communication skills to effectively contribute in the workplace. Third, we have failed to tap into the broad talent pool. Our record in diversity of all forms could be better. Women occupy less than 20% of the workforce, and we do not appear to hold our older workers. And fourth, despite the increasing complexity of ICT services and the growing demand for skills, the engagement and investment of industry in ICT skills development remains low. We do not appear to have extensive cadetships or graduate programs, hence building our skills capability is often left to the individual. If we now look at the ICT workforce study and the recommendations, none of these challenges are easy to overcome, but we do have some outstanding programs to build upon. And in addition, before I came in this morning, I did a quick search on seek.com, and there are 11,466 ICT jobs advertised in Australia. We also know that we have an industry which will grow a further 30 to 40,000 in terms of employment over the next 4 to 5 years, and we know we're only turning out 4 to 5,000 domestic students. Hence, it is no surprise that the team wanted to focus on how best to build a bigger pipeline of talent by accessing a broader diversity of talent and attracting more people into this industry, and how best to retain and enhance the skills of those once they're inside the sector. And finally, how can we improve the quality of data to make better decisions? If we cannot improve the supply of domestic talent, we will continue to rely upon temporary and permanent skilled migration.
We found that one of the biggest challenges in attracting workers into the ICT sector is the poor perception of ICT jobs. Many students see the area as boring, despite the increase in cloud computing, robotics, tablets, remote sensing, and so on. Students also don't know where to get good information about careers in the sector and see ICT ICT skills as low-level skills. The image on your screen shows the vicious cycle of perceptions of ICT careers, including poor ICT teaching and curriculum at school level and the reduction of ICT curriculum to only digital literacy. We know that ACARA is developing a national curriculum to be called Technologies, but more is needed, and it's not all about schools. The participation of industry is vital. Industry needs to increase efforts to promote ICT careers and to support professional development programs for teachers. We propose a number of potential strategies. First, the piloting of an online ICT module, which would teach basic programming, encourage students to create apps and augment existing secondary school curriculum. Teachers can be involved in coordinating the delivery of the module, which will give them an opportunity to enhance their own ICT skills. Second, better support is required for ICT teachers in schools. We recommend the development of a program to support new pre-service programs for ICT teachers in training. We also support the introduction of scholarships for existing ICT teachers. Third, we support enhanced industry and school partnerships where schools are assisted to deliver up-to-date industry-relevant programs. And finally, we recognise that we need different promotional products to reach different groups. These products should demonstrate how ICT skills can be an enabler across a range of careers and make a difference in a range of sectors. We've already got some excellent examples which are in place to address negative perceptions of ICT and assist schools. We feature a number of case studies in the report. Group X, which is a successful program of career fairs, open days, tech fairs and so on, and it has recently been funded for a national rollout as part of the National Digital Economy Strategy update. Digital Divas is another program targeted at attracting girls to ICT. And Code.org is an international example of an ICT career promotion website, which is a good model for Australian ICT promotional strategies. Its promotional film, What Most Schools Don't Teach, has had more than 10 million views on YouTube since its release this year. The website also serves as a portal where teachers and students can connect to online resources.
Thanks, Mari. Yeah, we've already talked about the potential growth in employment and the shortage of domestic students who are studying, graduating and entering the workforce. And we know that this has to change if we are to meet the skills needs of the future. We also need to remember that this is a complex industry where the needs of the employers are varied, and often employers feel that graduates are not job ready or do not have the experience. And on the flip side, research shows that many ICT graduates are not satisfied with their first job after graduation. Hence, the team wanted to provide a set of strategies to increase both the quantity and quality of ICT skills by, for example, greater use of work-integrated learning for ICT students, development of a pilot conversion program to attract graduates from other disciplines to ICT careers. A similar program has proved very successful in Ireland, and the integration of a baseline level of ICT education into all undergraduate degrees. AWPA recommends that the ICT deans work with other deans' councils to scope the development of a cross-disciplinary module on digital literacy, including teaching resources and learning materials. We view these recommendations as particularly important, so the next few slides will look at them in detail. Effective work-integrated learning is central to ensuring the supply of high-quality ICT skills. In the workplace surveys, employers routinely rank work experience as among the most important attributes they need in staff. Gaining experience of a real-world working environment enables students and graduates to develop an awareness of workplace cultures and expectations, gain practical skills, build networks, and develop the softer skills in communication, teamwork, and leadership. There is benefit in both collaboration between government, providers, and industry to expand opportunities for work-integrated learning and to support further development of professional cadetships in identified higher education occupations and higher level vet qualifications. Our consultations have pointed to the value of work-integrated learning programs, but indicate a range of different approaches that produce different outcomes for students. A more strategic integrated approach would enable more students to benefit from work-integrated learning. Our report calls for increased funding support for work-integrated learning to facilitate the expansion of these programs, improving the integration between various forms of work, integrated learning, and course learning objectives, engaging in more SMEs, and supporting a thorough evaluation of the various models of work-integrated learning and professional experience, with a focus on the contribution of these programs to employment outcomes and career progression. Our report also features a range of successful approaches to work-integrated learning already in place. Deakin University's work-integrated learning program, which connects work experience to learning by engaging students in a series of online modules and face-to-face workshops. The University of Ballarat's partnership with IBM that enables students to obtain annual work experience and guarantees the students a position at IBM on graduation. This is a real chance for industry, government, and providers to come together.
Thanks, Phil. Maria back again. The task force found that there are many graduates who, for whatever reason, want to change their chosen profession. So we recommended that industry and tertiary education stakeholders collaborate to develop a master's level ICT conversion program for non-ICT graduates. This program would provide a win-win for students and industry. Conversion graduates could gain access to a range of exciting and rewarding ICT career pathways, and industry could draw on an additional supply of ICT professionals. A similar program has been very successful in Ireland. Phil?
You know, alarmingly, almost 50% of IT projects are late or over their initial budget. While there are many factors which contribute to this, work by IDC did indicate that increasing the spending on training had a direct impact on the success of ICT projects. Despite the increasing complexity of ICT services and the growing demand for these skills, industry engagement and the investment in ICT skills development remains low. While there are many examples of multinational ICT organisations putting in place very effective workforce development strategies, and also larger domestic organisations, there is limited collaboration between large ICT organisations to build the general pool of skills, particularly for ICT contractors, which make up over 50% of the ICT workforce.
So we proposed that industry develops and pilots a one-year professional experience program for entry-level ICT professionals. A first-year program is currently available for international students, and we suggest the development of a similar model for domestic students. We also believe it's important to place increasing efforts on promoting the National Workforce Development Fund as a means to identify and address workforce development needs and highlight high-performing workplaces using ICT-intensive skills.
You know, workforce diversity is really a key challenge for the ICT sector. As you've learned, you know, it's predominantly made up of young males. Unfortunately, women continue to make up less than 20% of the workforce. The research suggests that workplace diversity supports productivity and innovation by introducing new ways of thinking and alternative approaches to problem solving and decision making. While Indigenous students with access to technology respond favourably Remoteness and the lack of support infrastructure can be barriers and lower outcomes for Indigenous students in STEM subjects and in STEM subjects. Thank you, Murray.
So we've recommended a variety of strategies to increase the diversity of the ICT workforce, including online retraining modules to support mature age workers, support for Indigenous Australians through enterprise-level reconciliation action plans, enterprise-level mentoring for female employees, place-based approaches to matching regional job seekers with ICT employers and recruitment organisations. Again, we actually have some examples of education programs that are providing opportunities for groups underrepresented in the ICT workforce. One of the best practice case studies featured in our report is the Cisco Networking Academy. The Academy delivers courses through Cisco's global partnership in 165 countries, where 1 million students study at 10,000 academies in 19 languages. In Australia, the Cisco Networking Academy has trained 105,662 students as at 2012. Cisco's partnered with schools, vet providers, universities to deliver these courses, and they, for example, include Indigenous partnerships through the National Centre of Indigenous Excellence in Port Adelaide, the Cisco Networking Academy for the Vision Impaired in partnership with Curtin University and the Association of the Blind, WA. The program offers both specialist and broad skills training. Phil?
You know, the collection of accurate statistics on the ICT workforce is vital if we are to plan effectively for the future. Our report draws on the ABS alternative view of 18 ICT occupations, which we believe to be the best available model of the workforce. We do recommend consistent monitoring and updating of data sets to ensure they are comprehensive and up to date.
We have been really pleased with the willingness of stakeholders across industry and the tertiary education sector to collaborate and partner with us throughout this project. Many of you have joined this webinar today, so thank you very much. I am confident that many of our recommendations will be successfully implemented. In our report, we identify a lead organisation responsible for the development and implementation of each recommendation, and they're not all government. In addition, the recently released update to the National Digital Economy Strategy provides 2 potential avenues for implementing the recommendations. AWPA suggests that the proposed ICT Skills Task Force, which will be made up of industry and tertiary education sector representatives, take forward responsibility for monitoring our recommendations. Funding for the Digital Careers Initiative will also support the expansion of Group X and contribute to the contribution of ICT education in schools and the promotion of ICT careers. Philip.
We really wanted to kind of finish this with a view of the future. There is real reason for optimism here. ICT will continue to open up considerable opportunities for Australian businesses in the years to come. From technology solutions to speed up and simplify the processes to tools that enable the development of new products and open up new markets. Because it's a growth industry, it will also open up a range of exciting and dynamic careers for Australian workers. Now, there's no doubt that we will face challenges in relation to ICT skills development in Australia, but we hope that the strategies we present in this report go some way to addressing these challenges. In this study and in all our work, we support a partnership approach to workforce development that involves cooperation and continuing dialogue between industry, the tertiary education sector, and government. There is ample evidence of collaboration and partnership in the range of best practice case studies that we feature in this study. This augurs well for future efforts to boost the quantity and quality of the ICT skills, which will be so crucial to our future economic growth. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Phil and Mari. We've now got time for questions, and we'll have quite a few questions come in. Can I answer the first question which came in, which says, will copies of this PowerPoint and the webinar be available? Certainly, the PowerPoint slides will be available on the AWPA website, which is just simply www.awpa.gov.au. And I'll certainly put that up, and we've got our Twitter feed there as well. And we'll have recordings. But we just might go straight away into a couple of questions here. Phil, obviously there's lots of talk about this at the moment, but do you think actions against these recommendations will reduce the rise in 457 visa numbers in the ICT industry? Highly topical question today.
No, and also a very complex one. I mean, clearly, the actions we're recommending are, medium to longer term in terms of the impact that's likely to occur with regard to 457s. At the end of the day, where you have an industry which is growing, particularly with regard to employment, and the ICT industry is growing. It's grown 100,000 people in the last 10 years, and it's estimated to grow another 30 to 40,000 employees over the next 4 to 5 years. So we don't, whilst we expect over time a greater proportion of domestic trained workers, we need to be pragmatic and recognise that skilled migration, temporary and permanent, will continue to play an important role in filling the skills gap.
Mari, we've got a question here about the next steps in terms of consideration by government and the likely timeframes and how we're going to take these recommendations forward.
Thanks, Robin. Look, it is really important to understand that, and I think, Robin, you reiterated this in one of the slides, that it's about government, it's about industry, it's about providers. And in fact, at the back of the report, we've listed who might be responsible for implementing a range of the recommendations, and government is actually a fairly minor part of that. We've stressed that we need partnership in industry, employers and providers to actually drive forward the recommendation. However, we have presented the recommendations to Minister O'Connor and Minister Lundy, and we're very pleased that there is going to be an ICT Skills task force set up under the National Digital Economy Strategy, and we think this is a terrific place to drive forward and monitor the implementation of the recommendations.
Thanks, Mari. We've got a question here which points out that the paper indicates that some who complete ICT study and still find difficulty getting work despite the shortage in supply. Any idea what contributes to this mismatch? Well, that's a really interesting point, and throughout the study we do point out about the fact that we've got, a shortage of ICT graduates, but some recent graduates themselves have difficulty getting their first appointment. Across AWPA, we're finding that we do have skills gaps, but we also have an experience gap as well. That, employers prefer to take on people with experience, and, how do you get that experience? And that's why we've put the emphasis on work-integrated learning. Phil, from your experience, as an ICT employer, how would you look to be addressing that?
I think you've already highlighted one of the key approaches, which is an expansion of work-integrated learning, or courses which compare but actually allow for theory-based and practical. And it's not the technical skills so much; it's those softer skills about how you communicate and interact. But also, like any industry, when an employer hires somebody, that employee, there is time to actually learn learn the industry for which they're working, whether it's in the medical industry or manufacturing. So it's a combination of how industry and employers can work with the providers to both kind of get this better linkage of not just technical, but some of these softer skills.
Mari, you must have found this ICT industry quite interesting because it's both young and male. And one of the big issues for the industry is how do we get more women in? And we've had a number of questions about attracting more girls and more mature age women into the ICT industry. Any thoughts?
Robin, look, it is very loud and clear that girls and women think it's a male-dominated career, it's not exciting, they think it's isolating, and they want careers where communication is more important. So it's critical that we actually show girls that especially in schools, that this can be an exciting career. And it includes the creative industries, and it is not necessarily and not isolating. We listed a number of examples in the report. Digital divas, girls who code is very important in the US, and we've talked about mentoring in the workplace, which I think is particularly important. But again, I think it's about promotional tools, which we've recommended, and perceptions, and we really do need to change those.
Well, just a question to both Phil and Mari. We've had sort of questions coming in to say that both the Australian Computer Society and the Australian Information Industries Association has tried things before, but maybe we've still got an issue. What do you think, is special about this strategy in terms of, putting forward solutions to some of the problems that we're trying to address?
Well, look, as chair of the task force, we did an enormous amount of consultation, and I know it's a difficult area, and I know there have been attempts before. But as part of the reason, and I mentioned this before, we actually have made suggestions about who should implement and monitor the recommendation. And I think this is critical, Robin, and personally, I look forward to following through and seeing how that pans out. This is not, as Phil has said, an area that we can afford to not do well. And I think many will be interested. And I particularly want to say to all those associations, we look forward to their continued cooperation.
Yeah, look, I think the fact that we do have some very good programs out there which do generate success is a tribute to some of the work that the ACS and the AWIA have been doing with employers and with the providers. But at the end of the day, the environment continues to change, the environment continues to evolve, and as you might have pointed out earlier, now the percentage of women at universities is higher than males, so that's a change. The actual use of technology is far broader. It's touching new things that were never touched before. So there are new opportunities emerging all the time. And just because we've tried something in the past, well, the environment's changed, and therefore the opportunity represents itself. And I think, as Mari's indicated, these recommendations are well supported by the stakeholders, and there's a keenness and a willingness to go and make it happen. And we hope that in some ways this report can act as a catalyst for some of these efforts.
Phil and Mari, we've got a question here which talks about the ICT industry reinventing itself every 18 months. And you've got a situation where degrees take 3 or 4 years, but their half-life might be quite short. And some people are talking about vendor-specific qualifications. I think the ones like Microsoft and Cisco, are very well known. Have you got any thoughts in terms of the balance, between doing a degree, doing a vendor qualification, or indeed the contribution that the vet sector can make? Maybe Mari would like.
Okay.
Look, I think the vet sector does have some good examples. Box Hill, for example, has a diploma in networking and includes a vendor qualification at the same time. And the research has shown that where you do that, you actually get fantastic job outcomes. So throughout the report, we've recommended in a number of places that work-integrated learning is incredibly important. And in VET, I think it's been more accepted because the notion of apprenticeships has been accepted, that your work counts for your qualification and for your study. So the report has pushed that quite strongly. Phil?
I think it's a little bit of horses for courses. The fact is, what the question is referring to in some ways is that, yes, the tools and technologies do continue to change, but there are many things which don't. For example, the way projects are run and managed, our inability to have a very high hit rate in terms of the success of project management. It's not because people aren't trying or people don't have capacity. It's just the complexity of the way some of these projects get developed. So I think, and also the expectation, if I'm doing a degree, then the degree might be really giving me a more broad-based background for which then I can go and get more specific knowledge when I'm either being employed or I need to do a vendor-related course, which is on a tool or a topic or a piece of software or whatever. So I think it's this balance between what is really the role of say, a university, what type of degree am I looking for, and how do I get some of the softer skills and the broader perspective. And then, as Mari's indicated, we still need very focused how to do a particular job or learn a particular tool.
Well, we've got a questioner here who's asking about the Pacific part of the VET sector. They said, we mentioned universities, but what do we envisage the role of TAFE in terms of this new brave world?
Well, I think as one of the slides showed that there are the majority of students studying ICT are in the VET sector, and there's certainly the report mentions throughout the important role of VET. In the future, just as we've said with schools and universities, vocational education and training needs to work very strongly with industry to ensure that the courses that they're offering are relevant. Certainly, our consultation with IBSA, which is the Industry Skills Council, has shown that they've included in their new training packages a range of competencies and a range of work-related experience for students. So we've actually tried to push the agenda further ahead in both higher ed and in VET, and I think if you read the report, you'll find embedded throughout a whole range of strategies.
The report talks about having work-ready graduates, but also having graduate-ready employers. I'd just like to ask Philip and Mari about their thoughts on that, and especially given the large number of contractors and SMEs, small, medium enterprises in the ICT industry, how can those types of businesses be graduate-ready and maybe partner?
Look, I think this is a really good topic for further kind of debate. At the end of the day, the model of the way ICT is being conducted, and in fact many of the industries being conducted, is one of being an outsourced industry in inverted commas. I don't mean outsourced overseas. I mean the fact that many organisations, when they come to do an ICT project, will look for a services provider. So what we've seen over the years is seen the growth of services provision. It's the same in many industries. You think of mining, you think of services companies who establish the mine, they run the equipment, etc. Well, ICT is most likely, well down that path simply because of the nature of the work. So what that means is, in many previous years, organisations had their own ICT department, and they had built their own ICT skills. Whereas now what they're doing is they outsource. So that responsibility, just as it happened in other industries, has transferred to the services companies. So we have the small and large services companies. They now have that responsibility. Some are stepping up and are doing work with universities or with the VET industry. Others are still struggling, and we have a large number of contractors. So really, I think, we need to revisit what can we do as an industry to really encourage more cadetships, to encourage, companies to take on people coming out of university or coming out of the vet sector, and help train them. This is a very tough issue because if you're a company, a services provider, you only get to actually, hire people if there is work. So you're kind of down the pipeline, if you like, the supply chain. So this is a good topic, I think, for the industry to continue to work on.
And I just want to add, I think it's particularly important, Phil, and your point is important for small business. Very difficult for them to, engage in the training that they would want. However, when we spoke to employers throughout the consultation process, there were a range of employers who said you can't afford not to take on ICT because it's part of your innovative edge. So I think business itself will in fact come to that recognition.
I mean, one of the issues is that we've got a shortage of ICT workers, but certainly in the higher education sector, it's a mixed picture in the vet sector. We have demand-based funding, so therefore, if we have more students, the institutions, get more money. So it's a supply-side problem in the sense that people aren't applying for the courses. Mari, why do you think that school students aren't applying more for ICT courses that can lead to, careers in the industry?
Well, once again, Robin, it's about the perception of the industry. There have been some industry people who have been passionate about the curriculum in schools, that it's just not attractive enough, that it needs a major rethink, and that is being done at the moment. So I think we have to start early on with young people, as well as the range of programs that we've talked about for women, for those with a disability, for Indigenous people. I think that it is a perception issue that's wrong, and hopefully this report will in fact move forward on making ICT understood as an exciting and rewarding career.
We've got a questioner here who says that they can recall seeing figures that demonstrated that the uptake in use of ICT by people with a disability is quite high. And that might be counter some perceptions. Are people with a disability a potential source of employees for the ICT industry? Phil?
The short answer is yes. The very nature of ICT allows a great deal of flexibility in terms of the way you interact, so it does present great opportunities. And this really comes back to this question of diversity. Many, I have to say, larger organisations do have the capacity to focus on diversity in terms of their workforce and are leading in the pursuit of how to get more people with a disability into the workforce, and they're to be complemented. But the question is, can we do more? Of course, we can always do more. We can always do a better job. And I do think the combination that ICT does provide opportunities for those with a disability in unique ways.
We've got a comment here, Phil and Mari, which says we've talked about tertiary education providers, we've talked about employers, we've talked about employees, but we haven't talked about unions. But I see that we've got a recommendation here for a union called AWPA, who I believe were strong contributors to the study.
That's correct, Robin, and we look forward to everybody who contributed assisting in implementing the recommendations.
And just for the questioner, AWPA, their particular task will be to develop and pilot a cross-sector program comprising case studies, testimonials, and instructional guides that highlight high-performing workplaces using ICT-intensive schools. And just for colleagues out there, it's one thing that the agency is currently working on, is doing a research project into the quality of work. And the quality of work is something that ICT is also involved in as well. So we've talked about, involving more employers. what will the next stages be for educational institutions in terms of, supporting the way forward like that? I mean, how will we be working with educational institutions in the future in terms of, progressing some of those recommendations?
Well, I think that it's the same issue in terms of industry being important for them to implement a range of the recommendations. It's up to a lot of the tertiary providers themselves. I mean, we just talked about perceptions in schools, and we've suggested a range of ways forward. But I think also for tertiary providers, the needs in the industry is growing so strongly that they themselves will need to recognise that perhaps they need to change the way they're delivering their education and training programs. The use of tablets is now so common in schools that in universities I think you're going to find a different way of teaching eventually evolving. But I do think it is up to the tertiary providers themselves, and I can see a whole range of innovative strategies taking place.
I mean, one of the other questions that we're being asked here is that, is there a role, what do you see as the strategies for skill updating and skills broadening, especially when we've got a fairly large contractual workforce? How do we keep the workforce up to date?
Yeah, that's a very good question, a very tough one. That's where I came down to. There's a couple of things. First of all, as an individual, it is difficult to continue to upgrade your skills. However, it's not impossible, and many people are out there upgrading their skills either directly with a vendor or through VET or as part of some work with a higher ed institution. Also, I think there needs to be the report talks about the possibility of providers and industry working together to kind of have a kind of a master's, a professional year type of work, more like to bring people into the industry. I think innovative ideas like that are very important to help the industry, if you like, upskill as well.
It's interesting, we're getting a range of comments coming in over the webinar. We've got employers who are finding it difficult to recruit ICT workers. We've got people who want to get into an ICT degree. We've even got people who are degree qualified workers who have 25 years experience who are now finding it difficult to get back in. So we seem to have a wide variety of experiences out there from both the employer, the employee and the provider point of view. Did you get that type of feedback when you're doing the study, Mari?
Yes, and I think that's why we've got a specific recommendation in there about improving our promotional tools in the ICT workforce space. There are a range of innovative recruitment strategies that I had certainly never heard of before that target ICT professionals specifically. I think there is a sense of a lack of information. We've also suggested there's some terrific apps for careers in ICT that they should be promoted, particularly to school students. So I think there is an issue of a mismatch in information between those who want information and those who want to employ people, and hopefully there'll be improvements in that space in the next few years.
Sorry, Robin, just to back a little bit about this upskilling. We shouldn't miss the opportunity to talk a little bit about the National Workforce Development Fund. Obviously focused around the vocational area, but this is an opportunity for either associations or employers working with the industry skills councils to put forward proposals about how they could upskill their workforce. There's been some very, very innovative proposals put forward. The fund appears to work well, and feedback from employers and participants is very positive, and they're both small and large organisations. I think you pointed out to me earlier that 50% of the people involved come from small organisations. So we shouldn't miss that opportunity.
I mean, we've got a question here about careers counsellors, job services providers, Centrelink, as well as, schools counsellors about in terms of how we, might take the ICT industry forward with, those types of workers. Mari, would you have a thought on that?
Oh, look, careers advisors are really critical. And when we did our National Workforce Development Strategy earlier this year, we were very strongly of the view that all of these organisations need to work together to provide information about workforce opportunities. And it's particularly important in the ICT workforce and for the ICT workforce.
I mean, one of the other questions that comes up is that when you actually look about, what educational sectors are supplying the ICT industry, in the professional sector, which is almost sort of 2/3 of the industry, it's very, higher education sort of dominated. How do you see that working through, Phil? Do you think the higher education industry is in a position to respond?
Oh, it's very difficult to say. We've got a large number of very capable higher education institutions. I think I come back to what is industry requiring over time, and clearly this whole notion of better skilled, more highly trained continues to come through. But I think we're also working to the point which says, well, it is a little bit of horses for courses. If you need to know how to use a particular vendor's product or piece of software or etc., then you may get that either directly from a vendor or from the vet sector. The vet sector may evolve over time, and higher ed may continue to provide a more broad-based, with maybe selective, and also potentially more focus on work-integrated learning, whatever form that might take, and building upon some of the very, very good work-integrated learning programs that are in place, which we've quoted in the report.
Look, we're rapidly running out of time, and really I'd just like to say that like everything we do in the Australian Workforce and Productivity Agency, we try and be as open and transparent as possible. All the information, including the report, the copies of the slides and this webinar, will be on our website. If you've got any further comment, we'll be delighted for you to email them in at the contact@awpa.gov.au. We'll do a quick sweep of the questions to make sure that we've covered all the points that people have asked today, and if there's anything that has come up and we didn't have time to deal with it, we'll certainly email the respondent back directly themselves, but we'll also put the Q&A, the questions and answers, on the website as well. So that will be happening over the next few days. The report will be available on the website today. It's a good read. We urge you to have a look at it. And also just to say this is the first of a number that will be coming out this year in other areas, including retail and manufacturing, and we do one on the resources sector. But one of the things that we can say is that whatever sector reports we do, ICT affects everything. Thank you, Mari. Thank you, Phil. And I'll just hand over, as always, for a final word to our chair.
Not always, but thank you very much for being kind. Look, I didn't want to miss this opportunity just to publicly thank Mari. I think the work of Mari as the chair is really something which we've come to appreciate from the AWPA, from the Australian Workforce and Productivity Agency. If we don't have people of Mari's calibre, then AWPA is not able to do the work that we're able to actually get done, obviously supported by a great secretariat and great involvement from the stakeholders that are out there. But I did want to really just publicly thank Mari for all the drive and leadership and helping us get this far. And really just to conclude on the fact that, this is an industry which has demonstrated growth. It's fundamental to our economy. The opportunities are there. And it's really something I feel, is there for us to ensure that we can grow and build a workforce for the future. So thank you, Robin, and thank you all the people who took the trouble this morning to listen in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.